Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's something that someone said to you that was really strange but sounded normal at first? Please remember to like, share, comment, listen, and ask for some shoutouts, and subscribe.
Hey bro, you should probably get a job where you won't get stabbed. I work at a variety store for a couple of years and some sketchbag poked his head in and said that. Turned out, he then robbed another variety store that same day according to one of my regulars. I'm not close to my dad's side, so it's rare to see his family. I might have been 8 or 9 the last time I recall seeing that side of the family. Anyways, I walk up to the family event to greet my uncle. First thing he said was, "Wow, you look good." Licks his lips. "You're shaped like a woman now," as he took a step back to look me up and down. Met one of my mom's friends who complimented my skin upon the first meeting. I said thank you and moved on. We went to dinner later and she complimented my skin again, then asked to touch it. I had no clue what to do with that question and said sure, against my instincts. She reaches across the table and put her hands on my cheek for a few seconds before stopping, very weirded out at this point. When I was leaving my mom's a few days later, she stopped in again and goes, "You really have such beautiful skin, can I hug you?" Again, against my better judgment, I said, "Sure." And she hugged me. My mom doesn't talk to her anymore for unrelated reasons, but I was worried she was going to ask to wear my skin next. Asking if I was just coming home from a booty call. I was offended. I'm in a committed relationship and a homebody. But because he is a 71-year-old neighbor, I thought surely his frontal lobe must be collapsing and he doesn't understand how rude it is, and it was just joking. I previously brought him and his wife's trash to the street as they are disabled and elderly. Unfortunately, in the weeks and months that have followed, it's become incredibly evident that he has a sexual fixation on me. He asked me about booty calls several more times while sitting beside his wife. He soon began calling from her cell when he realized I wasn't answering his call. Below is the full creep story as it escalated for your entertainment. Initially, him and his wife would occasionally grab me an extra pizza to say thank you for the help, maybe once every 2 weeks. Very soon he began dropping food off 3 times a week without asking, going so far as to begin honking in my driveway to wake me with breakfast. I told him several times that I don't eat breakfast, didn't matter. On one of those food deliveries with his wife for once, when they asked how I'd been, I stated all was well aside from average stress and health stuff, but nothing a good old antibiotic couldn't help. To this, he asked if I was messing with anyone bad, in a panicked voice. She looked horrified as usual with his remarks, but did nothing. This was the final straw in regards to offensive comments, and I went inside and began removing myself from their access. A few days after this, the neighbor saw my brother walk into my home and he rushed over honking in the driveway. When I ignored it, he got out and beat on the door, saying he saw a man come in. I opened the door after nearly a full minute and said, "Damn, I can't have guests?" He was very angry and said, "I won't bother you." Unfortunately, he continued to bother me. That evening, he called me from his cell. I called his wife back. She was in the living room and had no idea he called and had no idea why he would. So I wished her well and hung up. Within 30 seconds, his number called again. I ignored it. 2 full hours later, he texts me some mess about, "I'm sorry, I was just checking on you after seeing a young man walk in." A few minutes passed, and he realized how unhinged it sounded, so he tried to clean it up by saying, "I thought it was your dad, an abusive man they lightly heard about." Again, I ignored. This is when it all started to click for me. It's all him. It's all him. He's jealous. I went cold turkey. Fast forward, and he calls me from her cell phone offering food, to which I said I had a new dietary restriction and can't accept any more food. He asked me, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "That's private. I don't discuss personal health matters," and hung up. Weeks go by. He calls on her cell offering a whole catfish. I said no thanks, hung up. He was audibly extremely disappointed. 2 weeks go by, I'm sitting in my yard up against the house on the phone, They back out of the driveway and pull straight into mine. Luckily, I was on the phone with said brother who knew all about it. He told me to go in. I was hesitant. They put it back into drive and pulled the car even closer. It's still on the phone, so I get up, point in my new phone, and do one-hand wave and begin walking in, only to see his arm stuck all the way out of his window, holding a silver necklace. My heart sank into 3 billion pieces. The absolute sheer horror I felt was evident on my face. I went in and shut the door. They sat there another 20 seconds according to my cameras, and finally pulled off. It all came crashing down that he watches me, has no respect for my space and autonomy, is possessive, and is a total boundary-pushing creep who doesn't care if his wife sees his perversions or not. Age means nothing, I found. So one tiny comment turned out to be an opening for an extremely creepy, invasive, and predatory geriatric man, and I get to live across from him. Love it. Some guy kept messaging me on Facebook. As I didn't know him, I kept ignoring it. He started to message my friends and asked them to tell me to reply to his messages. When I asked him why he was harassing my friends, he said, "Oh, I'm not trying to be creepy. I saw you at Comic-Con and thought you looked cool but was too shy to talk to you. Then I noticed that we are in the same Facebook group." That Comic-Con was like 7 months before he started messaging me, and that Facebook group had like 30,000 members.
All right, shout out time again, guys. So let's get through this here. Again, thanks so much for listening. And let's see, we got a little more personal one today. Saturday night, Slam Master 1980. Want to work out together? Sure. Just let me know where and when. Jan, I probably can't spell your name right. I won't even try. Summer Perna 9207. I'm saying hi to your boyfriend for you. See, she really does listen. You should too. Heather Scott Fleming, hello. Hi, Stephanie. And Bad Trip NL, listen, you've done amazing things, all right? And keep doing it. I am, and we are happy to just be any small part of that. But keep it up. You're doing great. And Dark Miles, again, I only said that because I was giving feedback. You can say whatever you want. It's cool. I'm just glad you're listening. So have a great one. And thanks for commenting.
I was chatting by text with a man that I regret to say I had met in person a couple times. We were talking about what kind of we find interesting, and he asks, "Do you like taboo stuff?" I ask, "What do you mean?" He says, like, different ages. I do like older, younger stuff, but like someone in their 40s or 50s with a younger adult. The next text turned my stomach. No, I mean younger, like not... Ugh. Yeah, taboo is an understatement. Guy walks into the storefront I'm at, and he asks whether the place has insurance isn't up to code. That he sees multiple violations occurring, that he could sue, that my company could be in a lot of trouble. He goes outside and starts smoking a cigar. I see him walk off, and there's smoke coming from the planter. There's a small smoldering happening in the wood mulch. I walk back inside and grab my full water bottle. I walk out, there is now a small fire. I put it out. The guy goes, "You're in big trouble now," and I shrug and go back inside. Still don't know what the hell he was doing. I was at a gigantic Asian buffet that had one of those chocolate fountains you could dip fruit into. I was making myself some chocolate-covered strawberries, and a guy in his 30s came up and said, "Hey, are you making those for me?" I was 14. Oh, and another thing that happened at the time, and same age, I was visiting my mom's gym and relaxing in the hot tub. A guy in his 20s to 30s came into the hot tub and started asking me about my life. Where I'd go to school. Was it going okay? Did I have any friends? A boyfriend? What about my parents? "So your dad isn't around, huh?" My parents did not teach me jack shit about stranger danger or anything. I just felt uncomfortable but entertained him because that's what my mother would have told me to do. Be nice, don't be rude. So that's what I did. Again, I didn't like it, and something did feel off, but I didn't know what it was. I got out ahead of him to go to the bathroom. He asked me if I was coming back, and I said sure. My mom was in the changing room and said it was time to go because they were ready to go home. So that's what we did. It didn't occur to me for quite some time how up that situation was and how badly it could have ended. We were visiting family friends that my parents have known since college. They were like my second family growing up. My 3-month-old was unusually fussy the whole visit. When we were leaving, the man asked me if the sound of babies crying bothered me. I said yes, because an upset baby breaks my heart. He proceeded to tell me that the sound of babies crying doesn't bother him at all. It felt weird to me, but I just told myself he wasn't and didn't get angry if a baby cried on an airplane or something. Fast forward 6 months. His house was raided by the FBI, and he was taken to federal prison for CSAM. I refuse to write out the details, but suffice to say he's an evil, and I should have listened to my gut about the weirdness of him saying the sound of babies crying doesn't bother him. I'm so thankful that was the only time my infant was around him, and thank God my postpartum anxiety prevented anyone but my immediate family from holding my baby. I hate him, and will never forgive him, and I hope he rots in prison for the rest of his life. I was working the drive-thru on the 4th of July, and my restaurant was right next to a truck stop, so after inside closed, we'd often have truckers walk up to the drive-thru window. Guy said all these fireworks make me want to go shoot somebody. I laughed, and what he said fully processed, and I was like, what the All my coworkers had been hanging out in the parking lot since we were so slow. I could just take and pack the orders myself and sit in the window the rest of the time. I made them come back in after that, and we stopped allowing walks up pretty soon after. It was actually said by me, and I still cringe when I think about it. I, a woman, took my young children to a small indoor play place, and there was a father there with his 2 young girls. Our kids played together for a while, but him and I were sitting far away from each other, so we didn't interact. Eventually, he approached me with his older daughter, maybe 6, and he said, "Excuse me, my daughter has to use the washroom. Would you mind?" And I immediately assumed he wanted me to walk her into the women's washroom to make sure nobody was in there that wasn't supposed to be, to let her go into a stall on her own. So I go, "Yeah, I can take her to the washroom." And he finished his sentence, "Would you mind watching my other little one while I take her?" Oh my God. Now I feel like a huge weirdo. I come from a culture where the women do most of the child rearing, so I just assumed he needed a woman's help. But I immediately felt so embarrassed and weird. I left shortly after with my kids, LOL, and pray I never run into him again. In high school, my friend's dad drew the short straw and took 4 of us emo theater girls to the Ren Fair, all 16 or so in various costumes. He was somewhat behind us, so we could do the annoying girl chatter, and one of those rose sellers popped up and gestured to the 4 of us, asked Dad if he had ever given any of us something this long before. Her dad's reaction is pretty much what you would expect, something to the effect of, "This is my daughter," said while holding the dude up off the ground. I was a sheltered kid. Was the first time I had ever seen catcalling or predator mating calls outside of Nat Geo specials. At a party at my in-laws' house, I was introduced to my father-in-law's boss. We talked about how my husband and I met while working at Disney. His first response was, "Did you go have sex in a closet the day you met?" I laughed about it and said no, then thought about it more and how fucking awful his opinion must be if he looked at me and assumed I was having sex with a complete stranger while on the clock at work. Excuse me, but no, I do have work ethics and am not a whore. To be fair though, one of my friends did allegedly give head in one of the storage containers during a shift. Once a coworker grabbed my arm and started asking me questions like, "You still live with your parents? Is your mom rich? Do you need a second boyfriend? Where do you live?" etc. I was giving short one-word answers at first, but just stopped responding at all to his questions. After an awkward staring contest, he finally let go of my arm. I wanted to report him, but turns out he's been reported before, and management refused to do anything about him. I left soon after, and 3 months later, they shut down the entire facility because of a licensing issue unrelated to our team. By the way, he was maybe 3 times my age. I was maybe 22 or so. In 2018-19, my school tutor called me into his office because I was having problems with a subject. While we were discussing it, another school tutor looked at me and said that I was very pretty and that he was surprised at how pretty I looked that day. I didn't respond because it seemed inappropriate at the time. My tutor didn't respond and seemed to hide his face behind his hands, as if he wanted to avoid confronting the other tutor. I let it go, but a few days later I remember that several girls were in love with him and wanted to go out with him. I don't know if any of them succeeded, but I should mention that I didn't see him again until I was at university, where he greeted me last year. Where's the nearest public restroom? Wouldn't have been so creepy the first time, but it was 7 a.m. I was jogging in my neighborhood, and the guy, young 20s, I'm a female, was in my 20s at the time too, got out of his car to ask me and had a small wet spot on his jeans. I gave him some verbal directions, maybe check the public park or Walgreens or CVS. You literally have to drive by to get into this neighborhood. But the second time that this same guy stopped to ask me the same question about a week later while jogging in the same neighborhood, I was fully creeped out and yelled, "You asked me that last week," and called the cops. He took off, but I got his license plate. Saw his car again the next day in my neighborhood and cops came to take care of it. Never saw him again. During Christmas with my ex-boyfriend's family, I met his grandpa for the first time. After telling him my very Ukrainian name, he asked if I was Ukrainian, yes, and Catholic, yes, but a longer, more complicated story. Didn't speak to me for the rest of the night. I found out afterwards he's a super old-school fascist who hates Ukrainians and Catholics. Nice. I'm a male nurse, 6 feet 4 inches tall, 240, never married, and no kids that is prior military and still in the reserves and works at a small hospital. I've heard tons of things that are very forward or creepy from patients, family members, and fellow coworkers, especially when a few times I have brought my coworkers coffee or food and been in uniform. I was on the N train in New York City at 6ish in the morning, empty train car. I had worked till 10 or so the night before and had to clock back in at 7 a.m. I was still so tired, so my eyes were closed and I was trying to doze before my next 18-hour day. I had tangled my purse handles in my hands so it couldn't be easily grabbed. A kid, 16 or so, hopped into my car at 14th Street. He settled at the end of the car, so I didn't really think much about him. A few seconds later, my eyes closed, totally relaxed. I hear, "Give me your money," right in my ear, and he's sitting right beside me, tugging at my purse. I started screaming like an absolute lunatic, jumped up to pound on the door between the cars, trying to get through because I didn't know what he would do to me. It was locked. Sometimes they weren't. No one responded. People from the train car behind looked up. I know they saw me, but no one even attempted to help. The train stopped at West 4th Street, and the kid took off. I think my lunatic routine scared him. He must not have been very experienced in the art of robbing people on the train, but I was a 27-year-old California girl just trying to get to my bakery job, and I was terrified. I moved back home 3 months later. This happened nearly 20 years ago, and it still freaks me out thinking about it. Have a similar to one someone said below, "You remind me of my daughter." Woke up to him SAing me basically at 5 a.m. Felt something sharp against me and I was scared to move, so I pretended to still be asleep. We'd drunk a bit, so my husband was in a super deep sleep beside me and didn't hear anything or feel me desperately trying to nudge him whenever I could wake him. And I was too scared to actually move and do something major. A little ashamed, he didn't stop until the sun was up at 7 a.m. when he left the room to go to the shower. I basically shook my husband awake and told him what happened. Went outside and waited for the police while my husband fought off multiple people, preventing him from going to kill the guy. His name is Kevin Norton. I know he went to jail, but he doesn't pop up the SO registry anymore, so I think he died. A bonus, weeks prior, he'd asked me to come over while my husband was away for AIT one weekend. I wasn't sure why I felt so weird about it because he seemed like such a nice guy. Heard we were having trouble paying our rent and gave us $1,500 for it once. He was always a cool person to chill with, despite the age gap. He was my dad's age. He said, "I can come over, watch over you while you sleep, make sure nothing happens to you." Little did I know he was going to be what happened to me. One of my first jobs as a young female teen, 14 to 16 years old, was at Wendy's. My boss was a 50-something white man. There were 2 separate instances. First instance, I had just finished serving a customer and gave them a smile and wished the customer a good day. I turn around to get on with my duties and my boss stops me in my tracks and says, "Wow, you look really sexy with braces on." I nervously giggled and was so self-conscious about my face or smile for the rest of the day from then on. Whenever he was at work, I tried my hardest not to smile, which was very hard for me because I'm a naturally smiley kind of gal. Second instance, different day, same creep. I was filling up the soft serve machine. It was running low, and it was peak summer here in Australia, so shakes, ice creams, and all the sort were selling fast. I'm standing on a crate so I can reach the top of the machine to fill it up with the soft server mixture. I bend down to pick up the mixture tub, and as I stand up, my boss walks behind me, pauses to sniff me, and then remarks, "Oh God, you smell so sexy today. Ugh." I poured that mixture into the machine so fast it immediately shrunk
where I stood and served people for the rest of the day with this guy lingering around me, probably huffing me in as I whizzed past him trying to do my job. Saw the guy a couple of years later wanting my job back as things were tough and work was limited for someone like me at the time, and he had the audacity to tell me, "Oh yeah, we'll take you back. You look like you matured a bit. You were a bit of a wild one back then." Okay, Mark, okay.